Hello, hello, hello. My name is Esteban and this is DeathPileDestroyers.com. In today's video, I'm going to go over what is vintage. What is vintage items? I'm going to share my screen with you. And I found this awesome resource in regards to vintage. What's the difference between antique, vintage, and retro? And there's a link at retrokids.com. I'm just going to go to that quick definition, and it says it's an object that represents a previous era or time period in human society. An item should be at least 100 years old to be defined as antique. Generally speaking, if the item is no older than an antique but not less than 20 years, it falls under the term vintage. So what does that mean? Is that anything that's over 20 years would be considered vintage. Anything that's over 100 years old would be considered antique. So when we're listing on eBay for a particular item, now we know which keywords to use depending on the item that you have. Now, what's the difference of what's retro? Well, there's another good explanation in here as well. It says retro items don't have to be old, they can be brand new, but would have to be made in the style of the time or the item they are trying to replicate. It says perhaps the best way to think about the difference between retro and vintage is that vintage refers to the actual construction, while retro refers to the appearance. So retro looks like it's old or looks like it's vintage, and not necessarily, but it was made currently. It was made within the past few years. Now, what's the difference between nostalgia and versus relevant? Now, this is important to us because we're trying to figure out whether an item is valuable or not. So vintage items are considered nostalgic to those adults that are in their 40s and above. Well, anyone who's got money and above. So anyone that's no longer lives in their parents' home and they see an item and it reminds them of their childhood or when they were younger, and they want it. So they want it just for the nostalgic reasons. Now, antique items, they're not necessarily nostalgic to those adults that are 100 and above because they're not that many around. There's not many 100-year-olds around, nor many 100-year-olds have the money to buy things that are nostalgic. Now, when sourcing for items and you see that it's old, you may want to consider whether it's still valuable or not, and you should have that in mind. Is this something that people will want? Now, even if it's antique, I wouldn't just automatically throw it away or pass on it. But antique items are not nostalgic, and this is what I wrote. I wrote, buyers collect antiques as assets if they hold value, such as art, like trading cards, comic books, paintings, and etc. So, if it's an old collectible, let's say Marvel comic book, it's still relevant today because of the new Marvel movies. And so people want to go back and buy those old comic books because it holds value. And it will, most of the time, it does not decrease in value. It only goes up. So you should consider that as well. I wanted to share an awesome resource with you. This is vintagefashionguild.org, and this has a lot to do with clothing and whether or not this particular item is vintage or antique. You can tell by the tags. I wish I had an item with me to show you if whether it's vintage or not, but I don't have anything really here at home. So you would use this Vintage Fashion Guild and use the label resource to check it out. Now, they do have other awesome resources such as fabric resource and a few other things that I just realized that they've expanded on. But the one that I like to use a lot is the label resource. This is the guide to vintage labels. For example, if I went to the label resource and I looked up a Lacoste shirt, I would click on L. And sometimes Lacoste items have several different types of tags. And we will question whether or not this is a legit Lacoste item. And it's very possible that it could just be an old Lacoste tag. Here's a few of them right here. Let me show you a Victoria's Secret. Where are you? Where's Victoria's Secret? Okay, no Victoria's Secret. That's surprising. All right, let's check out Louis Vuitton. Not that we're gonna find many. Let's check out no. Let's find Lee. Of course not. Where are you? Let's find Levi. Label resource, Levi's. Oh, here's Lee. Uh, 1950s, 1970s. Let's take a look at Levi's. Levi Strauss and Company. These are all the different types of. This is how you know whether they're vintage or not. These are awesome tags. Anyways, this is a video I wanted to share with most of you because a lot of people that I've come across have questions regards to vintage, retro, or antique, and this is an awesome guide in how to determine how old it is. So I hope that this is helpful to you, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.